Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. I'm Leslie Looney, professor and chair at the Department of Astronomy in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. On behalf of the Astronomy Department, let me welcome everyone Zooming with us or watching the recording, alums, friends, faculty, staff, and distinguished guests, to our Centennial celebration of Illinois astronomy. As many of you, I'm disappointed that circumstances didn't allow us to meet in person, but I'm glad that we could pull this virtual celebration off, and thanks to everyone who helped put it together. This semester, Illinois astronomy has entered its 100th year, which is amazing. And the purpose of the next hour or so is to celebrate what we've done, what our students have accomplished, and what our alums have gone on to do. And to remember all the people who've worked so very hard to make Illinois astronomy what it is today. I want to keep the schedule short as possible and to leave time at the end for attendees to chime in and tell us something about what they did at Illinois or make some remembrances or just to reminisce, whatever, stories. Before we begin though, let me go over a couple of the Zoom details. We'll be recording it today and it should be available on the webpage next week or so. If you need technical assistance at any point, please utilize the Zoom chat window. We'll be on hand to help you with any issues you may have. When you joined today, your microphone was muted. Please keep your microphone muted unless you're speaking or asked to unmute. Keep in mind that you will be visible on the side window if you have your camera on. If you don't want that, please turn your camera off. And then if you have any other questions, utilize the chat window in Zoom to post questions or comments. Illinois astronomy has built many telescopes around the world. As a land-grant institution, the University of Illinois at Urbana, Champaign has a responsibility to acknowledge the historical context in which it exists. In order to remind ourselves and our community, we will begin this event with the following statement. We are currently on the lands of the Peoria, the Kaskaskia, Piankashaw, the Wea, Miami, Mashouten, Odawa, Sauk, Meskwaki, Kickapoo, Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Chickasaw nations. It's necessary for us to acknowledge these Native nations and for us to work with them as we move forward as an institution. In addition, astronomy must continue to increase diversity at all levels and address systematic racism and deep-rooted social injustice and their impact on astronomy and Illinois. Over the next 100 years, we will be a vibrant community inclusive of all of our differences. Illinois astronomy started as part of the math department. And in 1921, 100 years ago, we split off as our own department. Over the last 100 years, we have grown into an excellent research, education, and outreach astronomy department. Now, our classes contain something like 25% of all undergraduate students in the university, exposing many to the beauty of the night sky for the first time, especially our students from Chicago. Often I hear students exclaiming in excitement in the observatory when they first see the rings of Saturn or the bands of Jupiter through our observatory's historic 12-inch refractor, which is celebrating its 125th anniversary this year. Illinois astronomy, in my opinion, humble opinion, is really the best field. It's got it all. Astronomy is fun, it's exciting, relatable, and addresses some of the biggest questions for humanity. In Illinois astronomy, our students, our faculty, and staff, they've led the way on these big questions. The future of Illinois astronomy over the next 100 years is very, very strong. We have a great group of faculty, staff, and students all pushing forward some of the amazing science ranging from star formation to planet formation, compact objects, to galaxy evolution and cosmology. The department has a long and still developing history of engagement with telescopes that ranges from the 12-inch refractor in the dome with Stebbins' groundbreaking work on electronic detection of light to the Prairie Observatory, Mount Laguna, our first meter class telescope led by Yoss, to the early radio telescopes, the 120-foot and 400-foot led by Swinson, to radio interferometers, Bema and Karma led by Crutcher, Schneider, and others, to the South Pole telescope led by Moore and Vieira, to our modern sky survey telescopes with many faculty leading Illinois' involvement in, for example, the Sloan surveys, the Dark Energy Survey, the Legacy Survey of Space and Time, and many others. The department also has a very proud history of pioneering work in theoretical and computational astronomy. The department played a key role in the founding and development of the campus National Center for Supercomputing Applications, NCSA, motivated by simulations of colliding black holes, something we still do, by founding director and astronomy faculty member Smar, as well as foundational work in stellar evolution by Eben and Webbing. Cutting-edge computational and data analysis remains a core strength of Illinois astronomy faculty. In pure theory, Vicki started us off as a well-known cosmological theorist, and his efforts to understand the origin and evolution of the universe has grown in Illinois as being a leader center for cosmology today. I checked publications over the last 100 years, and the #1 cited paper authored by an Illinois person and not in a giant collaboration over the last 100 years is, drumroll, Double White Dwarfs as Progenitors of Our Coronal Borealis Stars and Type 1 Supernovae by Ron Webbing in 1983, which has nearly 2,000 citations, and it's a single author paper too. Congratulations, Ron. As we move forward into our next 100 years, I don't know what our big discoveries will be. Our current faculty are doing truly amazing research. Here are the core faculty members and staff today with a new approved hire for academic year 2022 next year, Kirk Barrow. Thank you all and keep up the great work moving us into the next 100 years. The department is increasing engagement, as I said earlier, with large sky surveys as our new Center for Astrophysical Surveys, or CAT, shows, looking to a lot more there. Our future is both bright and dark. Well, dark matter and dark energy, at least. Our past faculty listed here are a long list, many of whom you probably recognize. And I don't have a list of our past staff, but they are also critical to how our department actually functions. They all represent our heritage of the last 100 years, and all of whom have worked hard to make Illinois astronomy what it is today. Thank you all for that effort over the years. And Illinois astronomy is a huge family. We have affiliated faculty from across campus, and they all work tirelessly to make Illinois astronomy great. Thank you all. And finally, let me leave everyone with astronomy future. We have great undergraduates, growing numbers of undergraduates, and graduate students who really are the true foundation of the department. Special thanks to all of our students over the last 100 years. You do us proud. Okay, I've talked enough. It's time to let some other people say some words. And to start off, I want to ask our brand new Harry E. Preble Dean for the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, Dean Venitra Patton, to say a few words. Dean Patton?
Hello and good morning. As Leslie said, I'm Venitra Patton, Dean of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences and a professor of English and African American Studies. While astronomy has been on our campus for a very long time, I have just completed my 3rd week at the University of Illinois. I am incredibly excited to be here serving as your dean. My thanks to Leslie and the Department of Astronomy for including me in your celebration today. 100 years of astronomy at Illinois is an incredible milestone, one that we should all take great pride in. As many of you know, astronomy is part of the original liberal arts quadrivium, along with arithmetic, geometry, and music. It has had a place on our campus since the very early days of our existence as Illinois Industrial University. Illini have studied the stars in our classrooms and on our prairie for quite a long time, thanks in part to our observatory, which opened in 1896. I'm told the observatory is among the iconic places on campus that I must see, and I look forward to visiting and enjoying the events and activities that happen there, as so many of our students, alumni, and friends have over the years. I've also heard that our astronomy department is the only astronomy department among our public universities in the state of Illinois. This is remarkable, and only serves to underscore the impact and importance of the work that happens here. From the early days of Joel Stebbins, who served as the first director of the observatory starting in 1903 and made pioneering contributions to the field and launched our astronomy curriculum, to the groundbreaking work of Larry Smarr and his students and colleagues who helped found and develop the National Center for Supercomputing Applications, to ongoing contributions to some of the most important work in the field today. Our astronomers have been at the vanguard of the field. This department has made and continues to make pivotal contributions to science while also educating and training the next generation of astronomers. But the reach of the department goes so much farther. Through the work of many on this Zoom today, you help open the world of astronomy and even science in general to many in our communities, which is just a wonderful part of your legacy, one that is impossible to measure. This department helps to set the bar high for all we do in our college and on our campus. Congratulations to all of you for reaching this milestone anniversary. And thank you to all of the faculty, staff, students, alumni, administrators, and friends who have contributed and continue to contribute to the department's success. I look forward to working with and meeting all of you as you enter your second 100 years. Please enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank you, Dean Patton. Next up, I would like to welcome the department's unofficial and yet still unpaid historian, Professor Mike Speck of Furman University. He has a BS in physics from Illinois in 1988, and it was a past University of Illinois Astronomical Society president. Mike is an important friend of the Illinois astronomy, and he spearheaded the observatory's listing on the National Register of Historical Places in November 1986, and its designation as a National Historical Landmark in December 1989. Mike?
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here and impressed that there's 70 plus everybody who has joined in. I guess I'll do as quickly as I can kind of a brief history of the birth and rebirth of the astronomy department. Already, Joel Stebbins has been mentioned, and when he arrived at Illinois, he was a very ambitious astronomer, but he was part of the mathematics department. And he quickly built an ambitious research agenda, was able to add faculty. He had an instructor, full-time instructor, a research assistant, but he wanted to be independent. They still had teaching responsibilities within the math department, which interfered with his ability to teach astronomy, develop an astronomy curriculum. Plus, Illinois was a little bit different campus back in 1903. His first year, he spent $7 out of his pocket. That was the operating budget. And so he did comment that in subsequent years, both he and the university grew together and learned how to do budgets and how to grow a program. And again, things were different. By 1910, Stebbins had staff. He had already started the selenium cell research. He was starting to get international recognition for his work. But the tenuring process was a little different, and he felt the trustees missed him. So he did notice, though, that the other faculty who were tenured had other job offers. And so Stebbins asked his dissertation advisor, who was director of the Lick Observatory, for some help. And before long, he had invitations to University of Virginia and other places and job offers. And with those job offers, Illinois decided to step up, and negotiations began. And at the end of it, Dr. Stebbins was able to get a sabbatical, a 30-inch telescope, and tenure. His one demand that was not met was for there to be an independent astronomy department. And so he had several more years to go with that. In the subsequent years, by 1919, Stebbins was well established, and there's actually not only established in terms of a research, winning recognized national awards. The university had grown. The university was not only in size, but in prestige. But in 1919, Stebbins was selected to join the American delegation to Europe to help rebuild the International Astronomical Union. And the trustees, he was able to work with the university president and trustees, funded that, and they acknowledged that this was an incredibly important activity, and that now Illinois was arriving on the international scene with Stebbins' trip. And so by the time we get into 1920, Stebbins has some clout and continues to try to negotiate. And once again, kind of the prospects of a new job came along. Stebbins had done his master's at the University of Wisconsin, and his mentor there, George Comstock, was retiring and had handpicked him to be his replacement. And so once again, Stebbins began negotiations with the university. And one of the bargaining chips was the creation of a proper Department of Astronomy. And so in 1921, the astronomy department was born. Unfortunately, the rest of the negotiations didn't go so well, and Stebbins left at the end of 1922 to continue his career up at University of Wisconsin. He maintained good relationships, returned and visited the university often, and had a hand in selecting the next director, who was Robert Horace Baker. And Baker's tenure was a little bit rough. You had the Great Depression, you had World War II, and by the late 1940s, the astronomy department had kind of shrank a little bit. It was just Baker. He taught 2 classes a year, did some light research, but it was very, very low key. And so the university was considering, with Baker's retirement, closing down the Department of Astronomy. Fortunately, the LAS dean was Dean Larson, wrote a letter to Harlow Shapley, who was the director of Harvard Observatory, asking his opinion. And in a 5-page letter, Shapley basically said it would be a shock to the American astronomical community if Illinois closed this astronomy department, and a university with this kind of research budget, with this renowned chemistry, math, and chemistry department, it's shocking to think that we should step away from astronomy, and actually said that this is an opportunity to grow astronomy. And so the university fortunately followed Shapley's advice, and this is the rebirth of the astronomy department. When Baker retired in 1951, they hired George McFitty, who then started adding faculty, added Stanley Wyatt, I think was one of the first additions, and eventually started growing the department into what we have now, the modern, healthy, robust 21st century astronomy department. So that's kind of a quick condensed version. I have sources if you want, I can cite, but it's been interesting watching both the department and the university grow together and go from what was meant to be in a small instructional facility in a cornfield to now a renowned international department with resources all around the globe. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike. A lot of that I did not know, but it's nice to know that politics of universities don't change too much over hundreds of years. Next, I would like to welcome an old friend of the department, 1966 astronomy undergraduate and navigation engineer at NASA, JPL, Neil Mottinger. Neil?
Thank you very much, Professor Looney, for this incredible opportunity to speak at the Astronomy Department Centennial. I've always been envious of the high-achieving graduates who make headlines in department newsletters and science publications, and I've always wanted to say, hey, some of us average students have had some pretty satisfying careers too. And my goodness, I get to do that now. Wow, thank you. How average was I? I'm probably the only graduate to have a modern scripting language named after their GPA, C++. There were bumps along the way. I transferred to Urbana as a sophomore in 1963, but by midterm, I had retreated from 3rd semester German to 1st semester with year-round tutors. 4 hours of failing grade never appeared on my transcript, and wow, I hope the statute of limitations has run out on that one. In summer school, after my junior year, I was in the process of nearly failing computer programming when I read the Chicago Sun-Times and the Illini Union. Featured were images of Mars from the JPL Mariner 4 spacecraft. Any possibility of life there was ruled out. The canals did not exist. I ended the summer term on academic probation just as I was applying to graduate schools. Northrop Aircraft from Los Angeles was recruiting on campus the next spring and offered me a job when several other California aerospace companies, including the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, did not. That was okay, since there was no intense do or die compulsion to work there. The Northrop work ended in 8 months and asked if I wanted to interview as a contractor for JPL. Big wow, I said yes. I was beginning to want to work there. By then they had landers on the moon. That was the surveyor program. So less than 2 years after nearly failing programming, I'm at JPL, and 11 months later, I'm an employee where I've been a navigation engineer for over 54 years. I participated in some navigation accuracy analysis for the lunar Apollo missions in the summer of '68 and supplied values of some critical navigation parameters to the Johnson Space Center and again for future lunar missions. I'm in the mission design and navigation section at JPL, and most recently, a member of the Mars 2020 navigation team, which delivered the second SUV-sized rover to Mars with the first rotorcraft to fly on another planet. Now I'm supporting 4 other projects: a Mars orbiter, a Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab asteroid impact mission launching this fall, a mission launching next year to orbit the metal-rich 16 Psyche asteroid, and a Europa Clipper mission launching in 2024. Since 1983, I've worked extensively with 3 international space agencies: the European Space Agency with missions to Halley's and Comet CG and Mars, Japanese missions to planets and asteroids, and the Indian Space Agency with lunar and Mars orbiters and a lunar landing attempt. Aside from navigation support, I've also helped these space agencies validate their navigation software. The foreign travel that came with this work, sometimes accompanying my wife, has been a totally unexpected bonus. It all started as a junior in high school when my mother arranged for us to look through a neighbor's 4¼ inch home-built telescope. I built one like it, ordering from Edmund Scientific, and will never forget the first time I saw the Galilean satellites through it. Upon enrolling in Urbana, I sought an advisor in the astronomy department, Dr. Stanley Wyatt. I got 2 memorable pieces of advice from him. First, take a year of statistics courses, and 2, computer programming, Math 195. Success in 1 out of 2 isn't bad. It's not his fault I nearly failed the programming course. Turned out that was the best thing to happen to me at the time. I tell this to the elementary school students I speak to every year as a member of the JPL Speakers Bureau. It was not the right time to pursue a graduate degree. After a couple of years at JPL, the path forward for a graduate degree in systems analysis presented itself, and this time I got an A in the programming class. One of the highlights in the 3 years at Illinois was a trip sponsored by the Wesley Foundation to rural areas of Kentucky to trace the lives of those leaving their roots and moving to big cities. I traveled with a U of I sociologist, Dr. Gene Summers. That gave me a sense of wanting to serve others and pay back for the unprecedented opportunities I could see coming. I practice that now with training through my church on how to talk with people experiencing illness, profound loss, or stressful times. And sometimes that's the person on the other side of my cubicle wall at the lab. And with all of that, I'm indebted to the U of I for an education which must have opened more doors for me than I ever could have imagined or hoped for. I've been back on campus a few times since graduation, 2 at the invitation of the development office. These always included a visit to the astronomy department, where I've been warmly received. It's an honor to have been asked to speak at this centennial celebration. Thank you very much for the start you gave me, and best wishes for many years to come.
Thank you, Neil. It's very common for undergraduates to go work in NASA and places like that. So it's great to hear from you.
Thank you
Next,
very much.
Thank you. Next, I would like to welcome another friend of the department, 1997 PhD graduate, the Daniel Ilincer, Distinguished University Professor at Northwestern and Director and co-founder of the Center for Interdisciplinary Exploration and Research in Astrophysics at Northwestern, and our 2021 EcoEven Junior Lecturer, Vicki Calaguera. Vicki.
Hi, everybody. It's a delight to be here with you. There's many faces I don't recognize, so nice to meet you on Zoom today. But there's also many faces I do recognize. I'm very happy to see you again, and names. And I'm really happy to see some of my professors that I have not seen in many, many decades. So this is a real treat. Where do I start? I came to Illinois, the astronomy department, now almost 30 years ago. I always hated when people force me to think about time. It's hard to realize now. I arrived in August, I think about August 25th or 27th. So just about a few days away from 29 years ago, 1992, to start my graduate studies. So I came from Greece. You might notice I have a bit of an accent. So 30 years later, I haven't lost it. I came from Greece to Urbana. I had never been in the US, but I did know of Illinois astronomy, because I had gone to a conference in Greece, an international conference in Greece as an undergraduate. And actually there were tons of Illinois astronomers at that conference. They made a big impact on me. So I had that department in mind when I decided where to apply. Because, you know, not knowing much about the USA, I don't think I would have applied to the University of Illinois had I not seen the talks from these professors there. And the one professor, I remember thinking, this science really excites me, was actually Ron Webbing, who's already been mentioned. He doesn't know that. At the time, I was just an undergraduate. I didn't talk to any of the professors there. It was Ron and Fred Lamb and Gordon Baim from physics. And I got excited hearing about neutron stars at the time. And I thought, this is what I would like to do, I thought. So I came a few years later, and I was, in my head, I had determined that I'm gonna do my PhD with Ron. But then I had this little thought in my head that maybe I shouldn't just go in a one-way mode and do work on in the area that had attracted my interest without even coming to the department and checking other things out. So I checked some topics around. I worked with, I did work with one professor before working with Ron, but I also checked out other research groups, etc. And that just confirmed my inclination. And I was thrilled when Ron accepted me as his graduate student. So my early memories from back then, and I know Leslie is probably thinking, how long is she gonna talk for? So a few more minutes, Leslie. My early memories when I came are really impacted by my whole experience of adjusting as an international graduate student. And I must say, being in the department and experiencing the atmosphere in this department really made my adjustment very easy and wonderful. From the peer graduate students at the time, most of them, of course, US Americans, very few international students, I felt quite quickly at home. To the professors, apart from Ron, professors I got to interact rather quickly, regularly. At lunch, I remember the lunches in the kitchen. I was one of the few graduate students that kept coming. And I think Helen and where I'm looking for you are here. And I remember the lunches in the kitchen where I learned a lot about American culture outside of astronomy. And the staff were always a joy to interact with and learn from. Helen and John, it came to my mind. I start forgetting. So it grew on me, and within a year, basically, the department felt like a family. I remember also it was a brand new building. That was gorgeous. We were lucky graduate students moving. When I started traveling and meeting graduate students from other places, I realized how lucky we were. We had offices that were gorgeous with windows. And that doesn't happen even now much. So that building still is gorgeous, but back then it was brand new, right? 89. You had just moved. I came in 92. So the department overall, I stayed there for 5 years. The university and the department felt like home. When I graduated early on, I kept thinking that when I get my PhD, I'll go back to Europe, be closer to home. But by the time I graduated, there was no question in my mind that I would stay in the USA and make my life. I owe everything professionally that came after to Ron. I was thrilled to be his student. He gave me a lot of independence, but also the right kind of advising that I needed. Now I work a lot on gravitational waves. If you come to my public lecture, you'll hear about that. And the first time I heard about gravitational waves outside the classroom, research level, was actually from Ron, because even though I did X-ray astrophysics with him, his side quiet project was gravitational waves at the time. And that's where he was spending most of his time. And he never talked about that project a lot. So to me, it was like a little secret project he had, and I was not allowed to know much. So it was always an intriguing area of research. So thank you for everything. Thank you, Ron. It's wonderful to see you again, and hope to see you in person in a few weeks when I come for the EcoEben lectures.
Thank you, Vicki. Indeed, a department is more than just, it's the one part. It's the sum of all the parts. It's the students, it's the faculty, it's the staff. And I think it's great that you can actually talk about that. And our last person I'd like to introduce is Evan Tamman, our LAS Advancement Officer and an amazing oboe player. Evan. Okay, Evan may be having some problems with his internet, so let's see.
Can you hear me at all?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, as Leslie shared, my name is Evan Tamman, and I am the Associate Director of Development within the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. I serve as the Development Officer for Astronomy and several other units. Before the pandemic, I was on a plane at least once a month, flying to all parts of the country to engage with our alumni and friends and to solicit major gifts for astronomy. Now I meet with people over Zoom. I've met with some of you already, Neil and Barry and others. But I'd like to meet many more of you. So if you'd like to connect, you can find my contact information under the Give to Astronomy tab in the alumni section of the Astronomy website. And with that, I'll just say I'm very happy to be here with you digitally today, celebrating the centennial of our great department.
Great, thank you, Neil, and thank you, Evan, and thanks everyone for their uplifting stories and comments. Now I want to come to the point where we're going to open up the floor for anyone who wants to add a little something, a story, or a comment. If you can raise your Zoom hand icon, raising your hand isn't helpful by itself. Raising your Zoom hand icon, or to put something in chat, we'll go through and calling on you, or I think Rose will be doing that. I want to first ask Professor Emeritus Jim Kaler to say a few words to kind of get us going on that idea of reminiscing. Jim, can you hear me? Jim Kaler? Okay, maybe he's having problems with his net too.
I think he's not on me.
Oh, did he log out?
No, he's logged in. Hold on a second here. Where is he?
He might have stepped away from the
No,
keyboard.
he's at the computer. Hold on. I had to unmute him.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay.
There he is.
There we go. Hi, Jim.
Hi.
Jim, you want to say a few words?
Pardon?
Do you want to say a few words?
Well, I thought it'd be kind of fun to say something.
Go ahead.
I've been here 57 years, and am the old man of the department. I stalk the halls at 2 a.m. I have been here longer than anybody else, including the Dickles, because I think I beat them by 2 weeks. The people who should be mentioned also in this are Ed Olson and Ken Yoss and George McVitie, who was head of the department at the time. And it had gotten down to 2 people, McVitie, Stan Wyatt, who was a important figure in this department. And I've watched it grow over the years as good people have come into it, good graduate students. I want to congratulate everybody for and I'm hoping we've got a wonderful faculty at this point, and I think it's going to grow and grow. And I although I'm 81, 82, yeah, great. I hope to see the department growing even more. And within this period of time, in the 80 years or 20 years that got left to me, I might actually clean my office. Thank you, everybody. Congratulations on your 7th anniversary.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate
Thank you, Jim.
your words. So go ahead and raise your hand if you want. Brian, your hand is raised. We'll go with Brian next.
All right, so Jim mentioned Ken Yoss. And so this is actually a story about Ken, who, when I arrived as a grad student back in 1997, Ken took me on as for a first research project. And now this isn't about the research project, but it's actually about something else. So at one point, Ken brought me into his office and he opened up a drawer and he pulled out this bell that had a little back on it that looked like a ship's captain wheel. And it didn't have anything in it to ring, but it was just a bell. And he told me this was the old coffee bell from the observatory when the department was in the observatory. And he said that this bell, when it was mounted in the observatory, every day when coffee was ready, they would ring the bell, tell everybody that coffee was ready and come out and get the coffee. But this apparently annoyed the head of the department at that time so much that the head of the department cut the clapper out of the bell. And so the next day when the coffee was made, they came down to ring the bell and there was no clapper in there. So Ken said he just took a spoon and rang the bell. So if you look at the outside of this bell now, there's all these little marks on the outside of the bell where it had been rung by whacking the outside of it with a spoon. And so he gave me this bell, and when I finished, I passed it down to the grad students. And so it is now in a grad student office. So current grad students, it is in one of the grad student offices. So if you have it in your office, now you know the history of it. It is the original coffee bell from the observatory. So keep it, treasure it, and pass it on to future grad students.
Thanks, Brian. Brian, why don't you go ahead and say your connection to the department since we didn't do that?
I started as a grad student in 1997. When I graduated, I stayed on, and I'm now a teaching assistant professor. So at this point, I've actually been here in the department for, I think a good chunk of the department's history since it's I think I've been here for almost a quarter of the department's history. So yeah. So I've been here for quite a while.
Anyone else want to talk about? Mallory, you said something in chat. Do you want to see some more? Or did you log off? Maybe she logged off.
No, I'm here, but I'm in mom mode right now. So here's me and my son. He muted me, sorry. No, so I'm so happy to see so many familiar faces today, and seeing Professor Kaler talk was so wonderful. So hi, everybody. Because we worked on many of the Astronomy 100 videos together, and he was in the studio with us on campus recording so many of them. And he's so funny, and just his ability to make the content feel so relatable and so interesting was awesome. So I just wanted to share that little memory.
And tell us your connection to the department.
Yeah, so I got my bachelor's and master's at U of I in astronomy in 2013 and 2014.
Great, thank you very much. Anyone else add a story? I know there's a lot of people on here who are not shy, so.
All right. Hey, Leslie, it's Tony.
Hey, Tony. Say your connection to the department before you start.
A lot of you know me. My name is Tony Remajan. I was a undergrad in 1996 and came back as a graduate student in 1998 and graduated in 2003. So here, I got to tell you a story about Lou Snyder, who just recently passed, of course. But it was junior year, and I was back at home in Chicago, and I got a phone call, and it's Lou. And I'm like, hello, Lou. And he's like, when could you get back down here? I'm like, what's going on? He's like, one of the graduate students, I guess at that time, was having some difficulties and just left Lou with a stack of papers that weren't graded at all. And so I had about 3 months worth of papers that needed to be graded, and he needed them graded after spring break. So went back down to, left my spring break, went back down, grabbed all the papers and started grading them in my apartment, got them all done, handed them back to Lou. And pretty much since then, I was Lou's undergraduate like TA until I finished my degree. A couple of years later, I went to Iowa State University and was working there, got my master's degree there. But my advisor basically took me out to lunch one day and said, well, look, I'm leaving the department, and I suggest you leave the department too. And I wasn't planning on doing any of that. I was planning on finishing my degree with Iowa State and just kind of continuing on. So I was really panicked as to what to do. And the only person I could think of that could possibly help me was Lou. So I called him up and I said, here's the situation. And he just said, the simple phrase to me, when can you get here? And it came back that semester, fall semester 1998. And I finished my degree with Lou in astrochemistry in 2003. And my family and myself have a lot to thank to not only the Department of Astronomy for everything that you did for us, but also Lou personally and his family, for basically taking care of me all these years. So I know Doris is online. I see her there. So to all of the John Dickel and Ron Webbing, Jim Kaler. I was Jim Kaler's undergraduate TA for years. I had a lot of fun. I still have a signed copy of, I think, Cosmic Clouds. He put something like to my favorite TA because I made him write that. So that was a lot of fun. But to all of you guys, I really appreciate everything you've done for me. And I couldn't be where I'm at now without your help and support. So thank you.
Thanks very much. James, you have a story you want to add? James Wimmer? Jim, you want to say something in response?
Okay, I'm sorry, I had it muted. I have a screen to share, a photograph I took through the 12-inch. How do I do that? Share screen, here we go. And there it is. This was a class I took from Ken Yoss. He was my favorite professor because he was an observational astronomer. Ken Yoss sat in the cage atop the 200-inch telescope out in California. It just, he was my hero. So I took this class and graduated in 1975. I also had a lot of trouble with German. I failed German 103 3 times. You know what that does to a grade point average. But I did finally graduate. Worked in chemistry department. I had a laser lab there, and then I finished up my time at the university in the electrical engineering department. This was one of the first pictures I took. I also got a 3-inch Edmund Scientific telescope back in high school, took some pictures with that. I talked to Kaler after I'd taken some really good pictures, and I told him, it's just getting easier and easier and easier to take pictures, and it kind of makes me mad, all the work we had to go through to hypersensitize film, to spend all the time in the darkroom, to stack negatives. And Kaler said, well, Jim Waymer, that's the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to get easier and easier. And it certainly has. I know Paul Ricker has taken some really fantastic pictures. He puts me to shame. But anyhow, this was taken with a good old 12-inch telescope back in my undergraduate days. I can show you the eclipse picture. You can get ties made now with pictures on them. I'm very disappointed that I'm the only one who dressed with a tie for this meeting. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, too. Please stop the screen share when you have a chance. Thank you. Great. Thank you very much. It's a great story. Any other stories or reminiscing people would like to make in the next few minutes? Robert, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody actually remembers me at all, but I was there, and Professor Kaler was there, and the Dickles, and Ron Webbink, and a lot of people. I started in astronomy graduate school in 1977. So first had an office in the old observatory building. As a teaching assistant, one of my duties was to teach observing with the 12-inch. So that was a very good time. Then we moved to the new building. So I'm going to relate kind of, and maybe from a historical or the historian's point of view, you know, some things that weren't so great. That was not a great era in astronomy at Illinois, I don't think, at least from the students' perspective. Because what I learned was there were 100 new PhDs in the country at that time per year, and only 10 new jobs. And so, you know, you could have an endless number of postdocs before you went and found another job in some other field, unless you were really good. And so I was Eco-Eben student. I actually published a paper on as a grad student. And the only reason I went to Illinois was to study under Eco-Eben. And so I went into his office and I said, am I good enough? Am I going to get a job in astronomy? And Eco says, well, if you're good enough, you're going to get a job. And I said, am I good enough? And he said, if you're good enough, you'll get a job. And so I left. And so, although what I would say is that both the physics and astronomy classes and education that I got enabled me to go on and do things the rest of my life that, you know, so can't fault the education at all. Did not end up with a career in astronomy. So I got a job at Sandia National Laboratories, worked there for 38.5 years. It was a physicist and a manager. Finished my PhD in physics at the University of New Mexico. And now that I'm retired, yeah, I'm dabbling in astronomy again. I'm connected to the University of New Mexico since I got my degree there. And so I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm enjoying it as a dilettante. But I would have to say, I have a master's in astronomy, a master's in nuclear engineering, a PhD in physics, and I got my start at Illinois, and the education I received was really good. Some of the other social aspects were not so good. I was from a small town in Iowa. The only reason I got into Illinois is because I had outstanding GRE the only reason I got into Illinois was I had outstanding GRE scores. Kind of felt like an outsider compared to all the students who went to more prestigious universities. And culturally, I felt like an outsider because, I was just a country boy. I liked to fish and hunt. Phil Jewell, by the way, was my fishing buddy. So it wasn't like nobody was of the same social caste as I was. But anyway, it was kind of an interesting thing. I wouldn't say my social experience in astronomy was outstanding, but certainly my education was. And that's kind of, oh, by the way, Telemachus, in spite of what I believe you accused me of, I did not steal your pipe. And that's the end.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Getting the job situation in astronomy is not a lot better than actually 1970s, to be fair. It somewhat depends on luck, but we are hopefully our graduate students are better integrated with today than they were then, and we have a lot of students from small towns actually today. So thanks very much. Next up, I have a request from Paul Ricker to say something. Paul.
Hi, I've been a professor here for, I guess, about 19 years, since 2002. Some point early in the 2000s when Laney and John Dickel were still here, and before they moved to Albuquerque, they invited my wife and me to go on a canoeing trip on the Middle Fork River over near Danville. And they had been really, and they were avid canoers. They had really been active in the Isaac Walton League and the effort to get the Middle Fork River designated as Illinois' only wild and scenic river. So they've left a lasting legacy there, as well as in the department. Anyway, so we went out with our 2 Subarus and 2 canoes, and left one at the takeout and went up to the put-in. And I think it had been a very long time since I had been in a canoe as a Boy Scout, and my more recent traveling on rivers had been in rafts. And so I immediately tipped over our boat and sent my wife and me into the river. So we got an early swim from that, and yes, baptized in the river. And but that experience on the river was one of the things that led us to eventually take up kayaking. And so I wanted to thank the Dickels for that experience, even though it left me drenched.
Thanks, Paul. Anyone else have it? William, did you have your hand raised, William Poen? You're muted. You're muted. You have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Oh, good. Back in the early 70s and late 60s, I was a graduate student there. And invariably, we would have to do some calculations. We would go down to the basement of the building, and they had this old, clunky, rotary calculating machine. You would put in your numbers, like a sign out to 8 digits or whatever, multiplied by something else, hit the button, go out, have some coffee, come back, it would still be chugging and chugging and chugging. Well, after a while, of course, I graduated and left, raised a family, had some kids who decided to go off to college. So I dragged them back to U of I just to show them what it was like, and so on and so forth. Showed them the observatory building. We went to Altgeld Hall, and they had a display case full of old calculating machines. And blasted if there wasn't that one that I used was in there. And I said, I know how to work this. I use this. And the kids are backing away from me like, who is this guy? He's old. I wish he'd shut up. And it just brought back memories. I mean, I remember the coffee stains on it and stuff like that. but there was only one machine. So there was almost a queue to use it after a certain professor would give a certain problem and so on and so forth. So it was technology has passed me by.
Thank you. Anyone else want to add a comment? We have a few minutes left. Anyone else want to add something?
I think I see Barry and Francine.
Barry?
Yeah, Bill, I remember those calculators well for the old Frieden March. The astronomy department had them and the psychology department had them. And I know that because that's where my future wife was. But I was taking Elaine Avner's celestial mechanics course when the university got two Wang calculators, the electronic calculators that could do not much. But we would sign up at around 2 or 3 in the morning. It was the only time you could get it on a Saturday or Sunday morning to do the celestial mechanics problems, because otherwise, as you say, you're just screwed with those with the other ones.
Barry, what you want
It was a great experience.
Thanks. Barry, do you want to tell us your connection to astronomy?
I was an undergrad at Illinois from 66 to 71. And when I came in to matriculate, the dean was laying out my courses and he had me in elementary geology. And I said, why are we doing this? I'm going to be an astronomer. He says, oh, well, let's put you into astronomy. And I had two astro courses with Stan Wyatt. And that kicked me off, and that was good. And then as an adult working at NASA, I came back because I was funding some people in the physics department for quantum communication. And I started looking up people and whoever I could. One was George Swenson, who I'd never met as an undergrad, but I knew he was there. And we just hit it off right away. You know, the first time he came over to my hotel, we sat down, had dinner, and 3 hours later he left. And so every 6 months I would go back to Illinois for a site visit, and George and I would get together, which was good. We had a great time. I also looked up Elaine Avner, which was sad because she had deteriorated, unfortunately. That was good. But Leslie, you and I met, and then I got tapped to address about 20 or 25 undergraduate students.
Yep. About
what was life, and I told them the truth about what being a graduate student was, and it sort of shocked them. But life was good. But I'll tell you, the best thing about Illinois for me was during freshman week, I met this girl who was sitting across the hall from me now, still compiling the list of all my faults. So, life was good. Bill, it's great to see you. Bill and I had classes together.
Oh, wow. And then Rose said Maxine or Lainey?
Francine, but that's okay. I've been called.
Okay, Francine, sorry.
Yes, I was actually in the classes with Barry and Bill. I guess Barry doesn't remember me. That's okay. I got my undergrad in 72. And quite honestly, I went home to Rhode Island, where I still am, and had no clue what to do. In fact, as some know, I was folding greeting cards. But luckily, and you know how life progresses, 72 was actually the total solar eclipse in Nova Scotia, which I was fortunate enough to go to. And right next door to me, all of a sudden comes a van that says Skyscrapers of Rhode Island, the Amateur Astronomy Club. So I asked them when their next meeting was. And from there, I was asked if I wanted to volunteer at the LAD Observatory, Brown University's 12-inch refractor. When I first saw it, it was like, oh my gosh, it was identical to the old building that we had gone to, that we had been all a part of. And then during one of my skyscraper meetings, a man came up to me and said, I hear you've got a degree in astronomy, which I guess not too many people in Rhode Island had. Do you want to start working in the planetarium? And yeah, okay. And from there, I have been working in planetariums from that point on, 73, up until just a couple years ago, but I'm still associated with the observatory at Brown. I write a weekly email note on astronomy, including the history of it. So and also one of the greatest things is in the mid 90s, I started going to one of the planetarium conferences in the Midwest. And it turns out one of the annual speakers was Jim Kaler, who would always give an astronomy update. And he did this for many, many years until he just retired a couple years ago. Jim, it's never been the same without you. Unbelievable. And I do have two questions though. First of all, Dr. We took astronomy classes, Barry. I can't remember which ones. Dr. Looney, I sent a package to your to the astronomy department. I was wondering if you ever got it.
I remember getting a package from you, a letter from you.
Well, I had sent, because actually what it was, for those of you that weren't there, when Jim's classroom was dedicated, I actually, yes, some of you remember, I actually had some pom-poms, which I gradually, yes, and I had sent them to your office, and I was hoping that you'd have them now. But if not, please send them along if you find them.
Okay.
Okay, and secondly, I have to ask, is the observatory logo going to be on a t-shirt? I think it's beautiful.
I was trying to do a t-shirt for it, but the place we use for t-shirts apparently went out of business during COVID, so I didn't make it in time. So maybe I'll try to do that for everyone and have an option.
Thank you.
Thanks. We're out of time, but does anyone have a last minute thing they want to say? I'll give you a count of 5.
I just want to thank you, Leslie, for being such a great host today, and this has been a wonderful event. So thanks so much for taking the time to prepare your presentation and to host this event.
You're welcome. Everyone's welcome. Happy to do it. I've had to do something special for the 100th anniversary. I just wish we could have done it in person, something in person.
Thanks for setting this up.
You're welcome. Everyone's welcome. Before we finish up, let me remind. Sorry. Oh, you're welcome. Before we go, remind everyone that if you want to tell another story or want to have something and didn't want to talk or post an image, we have been collecting them for the 100th anniversary website. You can see the glass plates that were mentioned already, or picture of solar eclipse. If you want to add memories, go to the website and add as much as you want. There's a link to upload images or just words, and you'll see what other people have uploaded. Do that as much as you want. We'll be planning a virtual observatory tour, so you can see the old things in the observatory and some of the antiques and things like that sometime this year, if we can do it. We'll get back to you. We'll send out emails to everyone who's signed up for this event, and we'll let you know. If not, if any other questions or comments, please let me know. I'm always available to be contacted. But thanks, everyone. We'll be posting this to our webpage in the next week or so, and we'll put it on YouTube or upload it to Facebook. And so you can have access to this event if you want to share with others. Anything else you want to say before we all say goodbye?
I just wanted to say there's been a lot of progress on women's issues, from not being hireable because there were 2 people in the same department to now spousal hires, and not being hireable because you were pregnant, and now we have spousal leave. So you've come a long way, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, we try to pride ourselves in that now, and we try to do spousal hires. We try to we both genders or even for adoptions get time off for that event and teaching. That comes out of the department, not out of the college, but still it's very much worthwhile. And we still need to work harder, as you know, in hiring more women for our department. And that's something we are aware of and doing. But that's a good point. Thank you, Lainey.
Ron Webbing here. I just wanted to thank Vicki for making my job so easy. She's a fantastic student. So
thank you.
Good representative for U of I.
Definitely.
The whole experience transformed my life, really. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye. Thanks everyone for attending, and happy 100th anniversary to astronomy. We're looking forward to the next 100th. I hope you can all join us for the next 100th anniversary.
We'll be here.
Thank you. Good luck.
Bye-bye.
Bye.